Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. In this video we're going to be taking a look at a game of Conquest, the last argument of Kings. It's going to be between Nords and Old Dominion, and this is a game that I did not participate in. The guys were headed down to the local gaming store, but there weren't enough tables, so I said, why don't come around to my place, I'll set you up on the table and host the game, and I'll take pictures of it. So it's a chance for me to comment on a match between two factions that I don't play. We get to see a matchup that has not been featured really on my channel, apart from maybe one game. I'm not even sure if that even was a game that I featured. But anyway, it's at 1,500 points, just because our local Nords guy does not really have any more models assembled than that. So a bit more of a custom sort of cash game. Well, not really a custom game, just a lower level game in general. So I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on the lists. It's just a bit more of a casual game, as I keep saying. We'll talk about the unit selections as we get through the bat rep, but I'm going to make it a shorter one. Let's just dive straight in. This is the guys now sitting up in my very well known by now playing area. Old Dominion on the left and Nords on the right. And we're going to be playing the mission off center. I'm not too sure if they've renamed it, but the idea being that you've got the two large circular zones, and then there's the smaller objectives, which didn't even come up in this game. So for this bit, it's selecting light units. Our Nords player here decided to take 5 stands of Bow Chosen plus the Blooded, with of course the fire and advance ability. So 5 Bow Chosen is a bit excessive. You really want to take 1 unit of 3 or 4, or 2 units of 3. They're very expensive. They do have a lot of bad matchups. Luckily, they're very good in this particular matchup. Against Old Dominion, you want shooting, and these guys being able to ignore defense when you roll a 1 is very, very powerful. But when you have this many, it becomes a little bit unwieldy. As soon as something fast, ties up in close combat and, allows other units to get close to them, it becomes problematic, and their range can sometimes suffer, because to get in 14, you give your opponent the chance of marching and then charging into you, and yeah, it's a lot of eggs in one basket. So he's also got the Raiders over here. This is the Jarl, who is the Warlord, so he's got an ability that allows light units with characters in them to score and seize objectives, or something to that effect. Here's his one painted model. We're just really trying to get him to paint more of his stuff at the moment, and he's done well. He's put in a lot of effort and time assembling the miniatures, so we can't ask for much more than that. The painting will come. Okay, so as I said, there are 2 large circular objectives in this scenario, plus 4 other smaller destructible ones, which you go after if your opponent is hiding too much and you need to get a bit of a tiebreaker. No Old Dominion lights at all in this game. No carries, no nothing. It's just Legionnaires and up. So that's how we're going. So turn 2, we have Matt's new unit, which he's just finished assembling. It's the Auxiliarch and the Praetorians. Looking very lovely, I might add. I don't feel like he's quite finished with them, but they are mostly done here. Then the Raiders moving forward. This is turn 2 to camp the objective, and they're going to be there much quicker than the Praetorians are. So that's going to be 2 for this zone, 2 for the other one with the Bow Chosen in them, because the Blooded is with the Bow Chosen, so he counts the scoring. Plus a bonus 1 for having 2 zones, so it's 5 points to the Nords at the end of turn 2. We also have the Troll showing up during turn 2. Many of these miniatures are actually facing the wrong way, but he does have a big unit of 5 of them. Sort of see the zoomed out view here. I was explaining to him after this game that my preference with Nords is to run the Konungur with a unit of 3 Bow Chosen. So in your first turn, you pick them to automatically come on, you move them up. In turn 2, you automatically pick a unit of 5 Trolls to move them next to the Bow Chosen, and then with your next card, you activate the Konungur to move Seek New Escort to the Trolls, and then he can help keep them alive with his high resolve, and he can actually pump out damage from the front of the unit, since they themselves don't do a ton of damage. And by keeping them alive with a little bit of Indomitable, that sort of banner sort of upgrade, then you have a better chance of actually getting regen out of them rather than letting them get broken. But otherwise, they're kind of an interesting unit. I mean, they're sort of feast or famine. I mean, they're going to have some games where they're just invulnerable, and then other games where they just get broken too easily and wiped out. Alright, so Matt trying some Moroi. This is a much maligned unit that Old Dominion players don't really like very much once they become very experienced with them. They're very, very expensive. and they just don't really do a lot until you get that perfect turn where you can just charge, clash kind of thing, and benefit from their attacks, and then use their Aura of Death when your opponent tries to push back at them. A lot of the time, they do get picked off by shooting spells, that kind of thing, or just charged and massacred, or they just simply don't kill a unit that's worth the same points as them. So Nords just gathering here to defend against these Praetorians. It's going to be problematic because the Praetorians, very, very tough, and the Nords don't have a lot that's going to get through all of that armor. They've got a little bit of cleave from the trolls, but that's about it. Maybe a little bit from the Jarl. So yeah, a bit of a worrisome time, but you know, it could take the Praetorians a while to get through the trolls. There's also the matter of the Exiliarch having a supremacy ability, which allows the stuff to clash twice, so that's also going to be a big deal. Through the center of the table, we've got a unit of 4 Legionnaires. 4 is not a wonderful number of stands because it means that if you lose 2, you're broken, and the third one is going to shatter you. So if you lose 3 stands in the same turn, it's effectively losing you 4 stands. So that's why it's not mathematically a great number. Having said that, it is Old Dominions. They're not really taking any resolve checks, so there is that as well. Exiliarch in a position where he can move a bit closer, but not really quite ready to charge yet. But the next turn, with the supremacy being available, that's going to help. The Bone Golems, the fearsome Bone Golems here, just freshly painted by our OD player. He's now got 2 units of these. Bone Golems are an exceptionally good unit. They're one of the best regiments that Old Dominion can take. Nords are one of the few factions, surprisingly, that actually has a good counter to them, which is the Bowchosen, because these guys are defense 3 and hardened. They've got a lot of wounds. They don't take resolve checks. But if you're shooting at them and scoring a lot of 1s, you are just ignoring that armor, and you're doing damage to them very effectively, and you're not triggering their Aura of Death, and you know, a couple of rounds of shooting can really weaken them quite a bit. So as you can see, they are opposite the Bowchosen. This picture is demonstrating well, I keep saying my opponent. I was not in the game. I was not playing against either of them. The opponent here, the Nords player, is moving up with the Bowchosen, and the 3 stands on the left is just demonstrating where he moved to, and the 3 on the back are just demonstrating where he's returning to with his Fire and Advance ability. So they move up to get within 14 inches with those 3 stands. The rest of the stands are going to be out of range. They shoots, then he moves back, stays on the objective. It's a good play, and with only several stands, you'd not expect that much damage, but they rolled very, very well. Like, they rolled absurdly well, and the Bone Golem's not rolling very well at all, and they killed an entire stand of them, which is amazing. We then have the Jotnar coming on the other side of the battlefield, on the flank, up against the Moroi. I don't really know about this pick. Like, the Moroi, the giant sort of needs to be somewhere that he can flank the toughest stuff, like the Praetorians. So the Moroi are actually defending the flank of the Praetorians very, very well. I just wonder whether Jotnar might have been better going through the middle of the table, but it's hard to tell, you know, without the power of hindsight. So this is the end of turn 3, and you can see that the undead have not reached any of the zones yet, whereas the Nords have been camping them for a couple of turns now. So we got up to 10-0 in terms of the points, and most of the armies have arrived now. So at the beginning of turn 4, the Jarl decides to charge the Praetorians. I was looking at this play and I was like, this is suicidal. They are not going to inflict much damage and they are going to die. But on closer inspection, it's not the worst play I've ever seen, because there's a very small chance that these guys might survive with like 1 stand left, like if they're really lucky. And worst case scenario, the Praetorians, you know, fail to cut through them, you know, and delays them for another turn. So with the Bowchosen doing very well on the opposite side of the table, if you can just score for another round and just really stave off those late game points, it could be good. So they charge in, they do impact hits, they do a bit of a swing, and they maybe kill like 1 standard Praetorians. And then you also have the Exiliarch appearing to challenge and actually kills the Jarl. So I mentioned that maybe he should have just declined the duel, but then of course the guys are broken. It's just easier to shatter the unit. So yeah, it's a tough situation either way. So the Bow Chosen, as you can see here, they're in a position where, again, they don't want to get everybody into range of the Bone Golems, because the worst case scenario is that the Bone Golems march and then charge, and they tie you up, and then they're doing Aura of Death, and the Bow Chosen, although they're good in close combat, they're nowhere near as good as they are at shooting, and even though the Blooded is quite good with his big sword, you know, you don't want to be going for more than 1 or 2 rounds against Bone Golems. It's just going to be way too costly, and they're also going to be touching the objective if that happens, so you've got to be cautious here. So they once again move forward 3 inches, shoot, pull back, and they've reduced this last guy down to his last 3 wounds. So doing exceptionally well here to eliminate the Bone Golems before they attack. I wish I could do this with my 100 Kingdoms. I just don't really have enough firepower in the armies that I take to be able to achieve this. But, you know, hey, it is 5 stands of Bow Chosen we have to add. So over here, the Praetorians are reforming, which is something they can do for free. They automatically pass resolve checks, and they are hacking away at the Jarl's unit here. This does result in the raiders being destroyed. What I would have considered doing had this been me is I might have considered like not reforming and just using a clash and then getting a move action to get onto the zone. But you can't always tell in advance that you're going to be able to kill the whole unit. We then have the Varangian Guards, have not been painted yet, but they are moving through the center of the table. Very dangerous unit. I think these guys are a top 10 regiment in the game, if not top 5. They really have the 2 things that you want out of a Conquest regiment. They absolutely slap when it comes to doing damage in terms of cleave and line breaker, and they are tough as nails in terms of having defense 3 hardened 1 and 6 wounds. So if I played Old Dominion, under the current meta, I would go out and buy like 9 boxes of Varangians and 9 boxes of Legionnaires, and I'd assemble half of those as Praetorians, and that'd be my army, basically. Yeah, which I don't really want to do, by the way, and I do think that the meta will change over time. Alright, to contest them, we have the Ogres, who are not as good as Varangian Guards, but they are a little bit dangerous with Cleave 2, and, you know, obviously Nords get more powerful as the damage, so there is that possibility. We have the Legionnaires moving a bit closer towards these trolls, not touching the objective, though, which is very interesting. So we have a situation here where they're sort of tempting the trolls to charge them, but also threatening to get in the way of any future scoring, so that's the middle. So the trolls decide to take the bait, just like the internet, right? Just like the forums. They take the bait and they charge straight in, and they do what they do best as trolls, which is attacking and bashing and then regenerating. And they do a real number on these Legionnaires over time, but we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so the Moroi just continuing to move up and, you know, prepare to deal with this little giant over here. But the giant has other ideas, and he decides to ignore them and just charge straight into the front of the Praetorians. So the giant has Cleave 2, which is what you want against a unit like this. So it's not the worst play I've ever seen. But the role of a monster in most Conquest armies is to flank, is to do a combination attack with the help of another unit. When you're just one guy against one regiment, usually the regiment's just going to beat you and you're going to lose the value of your monster. So in that respect, I didn't like this play very much. However, the other way of looking at it is that you are delaying the Praetorians from getting onto that circular zone for yet another turn, which is cool. Because if you could just bank some more points, before you know it, we'll get around to the mid-game, turn 6-7, the Bow Chosen are going to be way ahead, and there's going to be no way that the Old Dominion are going to be able to catch up in terms of points. So, you know, delaying tactics is actually a really good idea with Nords, and sometimes it's a good idea to just embrace this idea of losing units early on if you can bank enough objective points to win the game later. So over here, again, we have the Bone Golem moving carefully forward. He has some Varangians to back him up now, but the Bow Chosen are going nowhere. On the left, we have, you know, you can see the Mountain Giant in the distance, the Jotnar, I should say. And these are the Fenner Beast Pack. Not the best unit I have ever seen in the game. They've got opportunists. You have to use them very carefully, but if they go head-to-head with anything, you're not usually getting your points out of it, and these guys seem to be going after the Moroi. I personally would have kept them probably somewhere towards the midfield where their fluid formation is going to be of more use. Okay, so we then have the Archimandrite appearing. The good thing about him is that he can actually cast his spells to restore some damage on the bone golems. He has been given that magical item, which oh, I love this photo here. By the way, if you couldn't tell, I have this massive light at the side of the table, which when the pictures are taken of the miniatures that are closer to this particular light, they look a million times better. So that's why we're seeing a much better resolution photo with greater colors. But I digress. The thing is that this character has the upgrade that allows him to cast spells on any regiment in his warband, which includes the bone golem. So he doesn't have to look at them or be near them, but he does happen to be near them. And the idea is that if he does cast a spell on them to restore the wounds, he might be able to bring a stand back later. So that is the thinking here. But there are some bow chosen. Right, so over here, the giant just swinging his tree and doing a bit of damage to the Praetorians, but these guys have Aura of Death 4, so they will knock him down pretty quickly and easily. We then have the Varangians, and this is quite a crucial moment of the game, really, where the Varangians are thinking of charging the Ogres, and I do remember this being a turn where the Old Dominion are using their supremacy abilities. So the Praetorians in particular and the Varangian guards have the opportunity to clash a second time, or get a free clash, I should say, perhaps after marching and charging. So he goes for it, and he attempts to get the Varangians to charge the Ogres by marching them, then charging them, and getting his free clash. And this is where disaster strikes, where he rolls a 1 for the charge, needing a 3+, goes for the reroll, gets a 2, so they do not make contact. He misses out on the free clash from the supremacy, and these guys are now sitting ducks. They don't make it to the objective, and we look back at this and felt like this could have been the losing moment of the game, because it is, it's heartbreaking when that happens. Personally, when I think about these kind of plays, I always look for something else I could possibly do if, the charge is not guaranteed. Like, even if it's like a 2+ charge, if it's an important moment, an important unit, there's a lot of value either way. I give my opponent an opportunity if that 1 in 36 possibility comes up of rolling a double 1. So yeah, try not to take risks in war games if there are other ways to win. Otherwise, you are, you are inevitably going to be running into these situations every so often, and blaming the dice when really, if there's another way around it, you should take it. There's not always another way around it, by the way. Sometimes, especially in tournament games where you're in an unexpected situation and things aren't going to plan, and you're in a situation you didn't expect yourself to be in, and you need a clutch, and you need to go for that charge and a 3+, the dice failure, well, it's what it is. So, the bow chosen, again, shooting at the Archimandrites unit. They decide to leave the bone golem there. They don't really need to take him out, so they're doing a lot of damage here to the Legionnaires, killing maybe 2 stands. So yeah, here they are with 1 stand left with a wound. So they are not long for this world, but they look good from this angle. Bone, we have the bow chosen just staying back a bit. I said to them later that what could have happened here is that the bow chosen could have used their shooting and then the fire advance to move the blooded to just touching the edge of the zone. I don't think this is the biggest blunder in the world, because he does want to stay out of combat, doesn't want the bone golem charging through there, but also, like, collecting points is a pretty big deal, so, yeah, it's not always easy to know the perfect move every single time. Like, this is a game where you do have to think 2 or 3 turns ahead, and if you let your opponent get too close, sometimes the points don't matter anymore, and it's more about board control. So the Praetorians now activate. They have been murdered quite badly by the Mountain Jotnar, but because they have 2 clash this round, and the Jotnar's already been damaged by the Aura of Death, the Jotnar does die. So they clash to kill the Jotnar, then they charge the flank of the Trolls, then they clash again because of the Supremacy ability. One of the more powerful Supremacy abilities in the game, I might add, and they do a bunch of damage to the Trolls. So there they are, just whacking away and flanking them. So the Trolls have Oblivious, which is good for them because they're going to need it. They have to re-roll successful resolve checks in this situation. So then they activate and they regenerate some guys, and they're not actually turning around to face the Praetorians. It's still in the flank. I turned this the model around for my photograph. That's what's happening here, and you can see the hand and the finger to the right hand side, just indicating that they are sort of like 4 wounds inflicted kind of thing. So yeah, they do a bunch of damage. The guys on this end of the regiment completely annihilate the remaining legionnaires, but as you can see on the right, they're struggling to do damage against the Praetorians, because, you know, the Praetorians are in tier 2 at this point. They're getting Bastion, and everything's going in the front of the Praetorians in this case. Over here, the Moroi are marching and then charging into the Fen Beast Pack, which will allow the Beast Pack to potentially attack first, but there is like 9 Aura of Death hits here, 3 per stand, so that's what's going to allow the Moroi to win this fight long term. This is not really like a titanic battle. It's not like the best regiment in the game versus the best regiment in the game. Both of these guys are kind of mid-tier regiments overall. So yeah, and then we have the Augurs charging into the Varangians, who shamefully and pathetically failed their charge, rolling a 1 and then a 2, needing 3+. So the Augurs just charge through here. No impact hits because of the forest, but they have a Nord rule allowing them to keep the inspired rule despite going through the forest. So forest turns off impacts, but not inspired, and that's because of the Nord wording. So they rush in here and they swing their big clubs and their hammers, and they are cleave 2. That gets marked down to cleave 1 because of hardened, and the Rangers have got 6 wounds each. But hey, you know, the Augurs do a good job belting out some battering and do what they do best. So we then have the single Bone Golem marching forward and then charging the flank here, just to try and get a little bit of Aura of Death into the Augurs. But yeah, the problem here is that they're just right in front of those Bowchosen, which, you know, the Bowchosen can either wipe out the Archimandrite or they can pick off this last Bone Golem, and then the Augurs can actually have another round of combat against the Varangians if they attack first. So it's getting pretty violent at this point. So over here, as expected, the Fen Beasts do a bit of damage to the Moroi, but they are suffering from Aura of Death and taking a lot of damage themselves. The Archimandrite is able to cast his unholy power, Hazeli's Touch or whatever it's called, and bring back 1 stand of Bone Golems, which is where things start to get a bit scary. When you see a massive big dreadnought, Space Marine dreadnought come back like that, that's what they look like to me. You know, it becomes problematic, but, you know, there are 5 stands of Bowchosen plus the blooded, like, right next to them in short range, where the Nords can just aim and volley. So yeah, that in this situation, the circumstances aren't that scary for the Nords. They are for the Old Dominion. So we have the Archimandrite moving onto the zone. The Bone Golems in combat with the Augurs. This is the end of the turn. So the Old Dominion doing very well on the right-hand side over there, but not so much on the left-hand side, although it's close. The dice roll matters, so for supremacy. And Nords win it again. They've been consistently winning the supremacy roll, so the Augurs activate first, and they absolutely trash the Varangian guards. And it turned out the Old Dominion player had picked the Varangians as his first card as well. So whoever would have won this roll probably would have come away with a massive advantage. It still does look pretty Nords favored either way, but you can sort of see from this photo that if the Varangians kill the Augurs completely and the Bowchosen have to go after the Bone Golems, you could get a situation where the Varangians eventually make it into combat with the Bowchosen. There's no more scoring on that side of the table, and then the patrols die, and the Old Dominion can start scoring on one zone for the rest of the game. It could have gotten interesting there, but this is the game decider here, where the Nords just win the roll anyway. The Augurs wipe out the Varangians, and that is that. Over here, the Praetorians and the Auxiliarch destroying the rest of the Trolls pretty easily, given their positioning and being at tier 3 at this point. The Bone Golems are wiped out by the Bowchosen, as you'd expect. They still have to deal with the Legionnaires, but you know that's not going to be too hard. The Fenebeasts are being mowed down by the Moroi here, of course, being completely wiped out by Aura of Death and the basic clash attacks. The Trolls, as mentioned, do eventually meet their final demise, despite, you know, wanting to regen. They can't when they're broken, so the Auxiliarch is just chopping them down, mowing them down. The Legionnaires making into close combat with the Blooded, just to really stop the Bowchosen from moving onto the zone, but, you know, you have a situation where the Bowchosen are actually quite good in close combat, so they are able to quite easily wipe them out. But just for fun, the Nords player turns around in this next turn with the Ogres and charges the back of them, putting out some impact hits and just wiping them out. So we're pretty much calling it there. Moroi charging one of these objectives to pick up a few more points, but the end of the game works out like this. You have the Nords on one side of the battlefield and the Old Dominion on the other. But the Nords are well ahead on points, and if we played out the last 3 turns, what happens here is that the Ogres stay on that zone camping it, and the Bowchosen will simply wheel around, move over, and shoot the Praetorians to death, which they can very, very, very easily do. So that was a fun one. I really enjoyed witnessing that, and it was quite cool to have a bat rep where I'm taking photos of other people's games just so we could see more matchups on YouTube. Can't wait to see the Nords painted up a bit more. I love their miniatures. I'm quite jealous that I don't get to paint the Raiders and the Bowchosen and the Huskarls, some of my favorite units. Love to paint a Nords army one day. That'd be really, really cool. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this bat rep. A nice dinky little one at 1,500 points. There is a game day coming up in Auckland on Sunday, which I'm really looking forward to. I'll be playing against Wadroon in the new Tontor. And I'll also be playing my very first 100 Kingdoms mirror match, which is going to be great fun as well. So I'm devising some lists for that. If you want to be notified about those bat reps coming out, please subscribe, hit like, hit the bell notifications, and I will do my best to make some more videos for you. See you there.